Good afternoon to everyone joining us. We're just going to give it a second to let all the participants come in. Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ariana Miller. I am the event planner here at the HIA-LI. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming to the 32nd Annual Trade Show and for joining us at this fantastic seminar we have today, For Profit and Nonprofits, Building a Business Social Responsibility. We have an excellent panel lined up for you. We have Paul Pachter, who is the CEO of Long Island Cares. And then our panelists consist of Lee Silberman, who is the CEO of the Habitat for Humanity of Suffolk. We have John Miller, President and CEO of the Guide Dog Foundation and America's Vet Dogs. And we also have Michael Stoltz, the CEO of the Association for Mental Health and Wellness. So great panel lined up. We ask that if you have any questions, you please add them to the Q&A feature on the bottom, and our panelists will get to all your questions. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Paul.
Thank you, Ariana. And first of all, I want to thank Lee and John and Mike for joining the presentation. I couldn't be surrounded by three more capable people, each of them having tremendous reputations here in the region for the work that they do. And to have these three folks focus in on the issue of social responsibility, I think is going to be very valuable for everyone that's tuned in to this session. So let me just announce that one of the ways that this particular seminar session came to be is because the HIA-LI recently launched a new committee, a committee on corporate social responsibility, which is open to both the for-profit and the for-profit sector. And that committee is chaired by Lee Silberman of Habitat in Suffolk and myself. And this is an opportunity not only to roll out and describe the work of the new committee, but also to get the dialogue started. So with that, I do want to start the dialogue. And what I'm focusing in on right now, so I'll raise the question for the three of you, is from your vantage point as the CEO of a major nonprofit corporation. We've got, three organizations here, well, I'll throw myself in, four, who have tremendous name recognition on Long Island. So as the CEO of a major corporation, how important is it to you to incorporate social responsibility into your organization's focus? And if you want, also take a stab at defining social responsibility. John, maybe I'll begin with you on this question, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem. And good to be here with everybody. And thank you, Paul, for moderating and taking us through all this. At the Guide Dog Foundation and America's Vet Dogs, it's social responsibility is core to all that we do. Looking at the landscape here on Long Island, and we also operate nationally beyond Long Island, working with corporations and working with associations, really is an important facet to all that we do. And we found that having engagement opportunities for our partners who want to be socially responsible is a very important piece to an overall relationship. And I think we want to do good business. We want to work with businesses that have good reputations, and it's a win-win, right? And I look at it as a two-way street, right? We have to be good, from a socially and an ethical standpoint as well. And we love to work together to create the engagement. To oversimplify definition, it would be doing the right thing, right? Making sure people are doing the right things, for the right reasons, being honest in your interactions, and providing opportunity on both sides of a relationship to further, the cause of all involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I certainly concur with that. Mike, what about you and your organization?
So the Association for Mental Health and Wellness is basically been around for 5 or 6 years. It was a merged organization from merging with Clubhouse in Suffolk, the association, the Mental Health Association in Suffolk, and Suffolk County United Veterans. We have basically we are the MHA for Suffolk County. There's also a counterpart MHA in Nassau County. And we like to be the the first point of contact for people and families, employers, workplaces, libraries, education, schools, for when people are looking for care for the first time. So with respect to social responsibility, look, we're in a time right now, we're all doing this virtually. Our lives have changed dramatically. I think we're at a time where everybody has some understanding right now of mental health, even a level of mental health impairment. We know now what depression and anxiety feels like. And in my career, and Paul and I crossed paths for many years when Paul was in the mental health world, we spent a lot of our time trying to get people to understand the stigma and the discrimination that was too often associated with mental health issues and mental illnesses. So we're at a time right now that everybody kind of understands it. But with respect to social responsibility, mental health issues don't occur in the same way and aren't treated the same way by different cultures, by people of color experience things differently, people who have different languages. And we have a huge number of disparities that happen with respect to mental health care. We have a high number of people of color who are in state prison and in counties, in county jails, predominantly because of mental health conditions that were untreated, neglected, misunderstood, where they were never connected, like happens perhaps for many other people who are not of color, or who for English may be their primary language. So this has been a deeply personal time for us in my sector. In my agency, we have work groups associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our staff of color have shared some of the prejudice and discrimination that has happened to them on the job, in their sector, driving an agency car in neighborhoods, getting stopped by police. This is a deeply personal experience for us that we know other people of color and of different languages, primary languages, have also experienced. So social responsibility for us is about being a part of so many public conversations, work groups, discussions through churches, through community centers, through libraries, through business organizations, to be able to talk about these disparities that particularly converge for us in mental health care, but converge in other ways for so many other people. I'm sure, Paul, you could discuss the disparities among food and food access and access to healthy foods and diets and such, and the role that your organization plays. So social responsibility, through the incidents that we've all witnessed over the past 6 months, but have been around us for many, many more years than that, really plays a huge role in mental health and in the mission of my organization.
You're taking us a little down the road to another question I'm going to ask in a little while, but I appreciate how you just brought into the conversation that there is something we could be doing as nonprofit corporations to engage in social responsibility as well. I think the majority of the people, especially in the nonprofit field, when you talk about corporate social responsibility, their initial reaction is what the corporate sector can do for me, not so much what we can do for the corporate sector. Lee, you lead an organization that's just, take this back after I say it, it hemorrhages social responsibility. You think of Habitat for Humanity, an organization that came to the forefront because a former president of the United States embraced the idea and put it on the map. How much more socially responsible can you get when your organization is tied to a former US president? But again, the question is, how important is it for the mission of Habitat for Humanity Suffolk to incorporate social responsibility into the focus of your work?
It's extremely important. It's becoming it's becoming more important. So we are, an organization, our vision is a world where everyone has a decent place to live. So clearly, as an organization, yes, we have, I guess, social responsibility, but I took your question as, what is it that we're supposed to do? So as an affiliate and as part of the national organization, we have been rethinking things like this. Habitat historically has been kind of an insular organization. And over the last couple of years, Habitat has put advocacy on its menu of things that we need to do, that we need to be out in the community and advocating in a non-political way for affordable housing. But there's other things that, in addition, it's one of the statistics which we're not particularly proud of is 85% of all Habitat board members, 85% of all Habitat staff members happen to be white. And we serve a community that tends, certainly is not 85% white. And over the last, with our affiliate, we've started at the board level, an inclusion committee and diversity committee to figure out how do we change this? How do we reach out into the communities that we serve, have our board be more reflective of the constituency that we observe. That we serve. And then in Long Island, one of the things, because we are in affordable housing, we're all aware of the Newsday articles that came out, earlier this year about housing discrimination. And as part of the advocacy of our organization, we want to take our mission and address that as well. We build, we are, even though we're a faith-based organization, in terms of the decision as to who we build for, faith is not part of the equation, color is not part of the equation, but how can we take this mission and expand it and try and educate in Long Island and be part of the change that needs to happen.
I'm hearing, if I heard you correctly, you're looking at diversifying your board of directors to be more socially responsible in lining up to at least be representative of the populations that you work with. And we're going through the same thing right now at Long Island Cares, in meeting with our board and looking at the diversity of the populations we serve and the composition of our board of directors, the composition of our staff. And I think most organizations find themselves looking at the same issue now, especially on Long Island, because of the way the island is segregated in terms of populations. Let me go to Mike now. We'll go around. Mike, could you share one example of how corporate social responsibility has added to the overall success of Association for Mental Health and Wellness? Truly, you must have some corporate plaque on a program.
Trying to.
Named a building.
Well, I'll say, we have a plaque of a Newsday Employer Award, an award from the HIA for a nonprofit award 2 years ago. So yes, we've had a couple of awards. And I think part of it is recognized, our responsibility above and beyond the provision of mental health care to go toward these issues of disparities. So just kind of building on Lee's point and your point just now, Paul, at kind of the self-assessment of an organization. When we went through mergers, often, nonprofits go through strategic plans. Sometimes it's every year, sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's concurrent with a particular event. So for us, we went through a self-analysis and strategic plan in 2014 and 2015 as we were doing our mergers of the three organizations. And this realization of we are too white an agency, was the major kind of thing that smacked us in the face, realizing that mental health care was not reaching many populations and groups and communities right here in Suffolk County, and that we needed to change that from top to bottom. So we certainly did a lot of board recruitment so that it was at the top. But also we just convened all our staff of color and Hispanic people who were, for whom English was not necessarily their first language, our veterans who've also in their time experienced discrimination, people who have had psychiatric diagnoses who have also experienced their own experience with prejudice and discrimination, and said, how do we reach more people to be staff so that then people who are in those communities who have mental health distress or psychiatric disabilities, will feel like this is an agency that will be receptive to me because there are people who look like me, there are people who speak the language like me. And so this has really been about a 5 or 6 year journey of that own sense of kind of corporate responsibility in terms of what do we do externally. Now we talk about this process and this experience, and people on our staff are ingrained in community organizations and companies around them and share our experience of how you make the changes to be able to be attractive to employers of color, to employees of color or of different cultural groups, so that it becomes good for business as well. I mean, we're a business too. We have to reach clients. We need to generate a certain amount of interest and connections and contacts. So we're a business like everybody else, but the way to do it is, is that self-reflective process. And it's been very effective for us.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of just one other piece, so we have a large number of employees who are veterans serving other veterans, because veterans want to be able to talk. Veterans in distress who are homeless, at risk, or food insecure, housing insecure, they want to be able to talk to other veterans. It's much easier. Same thing for all sorts of other groups.
No, look, I certainly concur with you on the veterans issue, because I think that at our 6 satellite locations that we operate on Tuesday, they just serve veterans. And specifically for that reason, when veterans struggle with food insecurity, they want to talk to other veterans. They want to know that, they don't look at themselves as being part of the broader population, and they certainly don't consider themselves, quote unquote, to be poor. But on the other hand, they're certainly quick to admit what some of their issues are. Lee, an example of how corporate social responsibility is added to the overall success of Habitat?
Well, we wouldn't be around without the social responsibility of corporations. And I guess the most recent example is currently we're building a house in East Hampton. It's going to be built in 3 weeks. A local builder, Ben Kaprinsky Builder, is doing the entire project. They've gotten over 30 of their subcontractors to donate their time and materials to this project. And in 3 weeks from start to finish, a house will be done that will be sold to 2 first responders that would not be able to stay in East Hampton, without our help. And that's a great, example of corporate social responsibility.
Sure. John, I know for a fact, because I watch what your organization is doing, that you have a tremendous track record with the corporate sector supporting Guide Dog and America's Vet Dog. For me, immediately, you sit back in awe of your relationship with NBC Universal and how wonderful that's been, in calling attention to the plight of people who need the guide dogs. But, chime in with another example, which I'm sure you have.
Yeah, so the Today Show relationship has been tremendous for us, and we were able to scale that out between a couple different major markets across the country as well. But they've kind of adopted a Puppy with a Purpose program for us, and because of that, we've been able to scale it out with corporate partners. About 2 years ago, we created what we're calling, the Corporate Puppy with a Purpose program. And, one of the best stories that we have of success so far with that is, our relationship with the Islanders. So the Islanders, work with us to help name and raise a dog. They sponsored, a dog called Radar, a guide dog, a future guide dog. And we identified, one of the Islanders, close employees or somebody who had season tickets to the games. And, part of the process for a puppy to become a good guide dog is socialization, right? So we had Radar at all the home games, for the Islanders, all the events that were there. So there was no question, this dog was going to be, well socialized. Fast forward to about a month ago now, actually, we placed Radar with a 16-year-old blind Paralympic swimmer who is going to be likely going to the Tokyo Paralympic Games next year. So you can't, you never know how these things are going to work when you start. But you're having a dog that kind of grew up in the Nassau Coliseum and being in the Olympic stadiums that are out there is a perfect match. But not every ending is as high profile as that. But the Islanders, with their Puppy with a Purpose program, help shine a light on the program and on the service, so much so that we've created a whole program specific to corporations to help us work and help raise and socialize the dogs. And then, hopefully, the dog gets placed with, either, somebody who's blind or vision impaired, or in terms of America's vet dogs, service dog for, veterans and first responders. So we have an opportunity, that's very unique, for a lot of different corporations. And we're just trying to get it started and rolled out. And the Islanders have been very helpful in that process.
I knew as soon as the panel was put together that we would have people who could give incredible illustrations of how the corporate sector, is working with your particular organization. But Lee, let me raise this question. Do you view corporate social responsibility as a one-sided relationship? It's based upon what the corporation can do for you and your organization, or do you see it as a two-sided relationship? And how is it a two-sided relationship? What is it that Habitat does in return for corporate social responsibility?
Look, it's definitely a two-sided relationship. The corporations, in many ways are our customers, and we have to treat them as such. So we have all various types of branding opportunities, for the companies, depending on their level of support. We definitely, we always recognize them. And again, the higher level of support, the higher the level of recognition that they get. But we do realize that if they're going to give to us, we have to make it a value proposition for them as well. And one of the things where we are a little bit unique is that we offer companies a great team building proposition. So we have what we call a sponsor for a day program for a minimum contribution. A company in the pre-COVID days, they were able to send out 15 to 20 volunteers on a work day. Now we're rethinking the program, but we're probably going to limit it to 10 volunteers at a time. And for the minimum donation, they send the volunteers out, and we always get after the fact follow up about what a good team building exercise that it was. We have a very high retention rate. Certainly over 75% of the companies that send a volunteer group out to us once will send a volunteer group out to us again.
No, look, you're providing a great opportunity for people from the corporate sector, from the political sector, from the civic sector to get involved and work on something very meaningful. We got a question from Megan Smith, who's viewing this right now, and that's about getting everybody's email addresses in case they want some more information, maybe some more examples. So Ariana, at the end of the session, if we can take whatever steps are necessary to get people our contact information, because I'm sure all of us would be very happy to respond to any inquiries. we can do that. That would be fine.
Yes, absolutely. I'll send out an email to everyone with all of your contact information.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
John, same question to you. One-way or two-way street? And if it is a two-way street, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think relationships by definition need to be a two-way street, right? You got to have trust, on both sides. You got to have value on both sides. And I think in terms of corporate relationships in particular, for us, it's, to Lee's point, it's about being able to provide, some skin in the game, some team building, some engagement, with the organizations, that you're working with, because they are taking their time, and all of our causes are worthy causes. So you have to make it a valuable experience where people can invest in your mission. And we recently kind of reconfigured our menu of corporate opportunities to have, obviously in COVID, we can't be on campus, but post-COVID, on campus, hands-on experience with some of our dogs, some of our trainers, and making sure that we're providing high touch, high value, not only customer service, but an experience people are going to want to go home and talk to their kids about, or talk when they get back to the office, talk to their CEO about. So it's really about building that trust, value, and engagement.
Good point. Mike, two-way street? And what's your organization doing in terms of giving back to the corporation?
Well, you try to make it a two-way street. I'll say, my agency hasn't always been as successful in monetizing the relationship for it to be a two-way street. And I always learn a lot from people like John and Lee and yourself about how to do that. But on the ground, especially during this COVID period, has been, a big part of our agency is about community mental health education. So as people experience stress and distress and anxiety and depression, you experience it for your staff, for the culture, for your, the changes in the culture of your workplace. We certainly had a lot of conversations, presentations with corporations and other entities, libraries, churches, about being in the forefront of that education, to understand what it is that people are experiencing. How we have a product that is called Mental Health First Aid. This is an international product, curriculum to train people to recognize signs of mental health distress, whether it's for youth, for teenagers, for adults, seniors, people who work with veterans. We also have been training law enforcement how to recognize signs of mental health distress and how to engage people properly and effectively without stigma, without them becoming defensive, to be able to help people to access help and care. So that kind of education is what we have to offer, and has been very successful with a number of companies and community partners.
I think a good number of nonprofits probably look at this as to what the corporate sector could do for us, whether it's a small grant or a major grant or getting volunteers or taking part in special events. But, you're helping, I think you're helping a lot of people understand that there's a responsibility on the nonprofit as well to give back, whether it's providing direct services to people who work in the for-profit sector who happen to support your organization, or giving them volunteer opportunities, or giving them marketing and branding opportunities. It is, as we said, a two-way street. It can't just be the nonprofits taking. We've got to do something to give back, whether it's recognizing someone, donating to someone, partnering in a different way. So one of the issues that I think is timely today is, given the current divisions that we're seeing in our society, in this country, do you see a correlation between corporate social responsibility and social justice? And why or why not? We'll start with John.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's all our job, right? I think there is, a direct connection there. It's, it's our job, as leaders of our organizations, but also corporate heads, to make sure, to my point earlier, that we're all doing the right thing, right? We're undertaking, similar to what everybody else had talked about. We're taking a deep dive into diversity, equity, and inclusion, for ourselves, with our board, with our staff, with our clients. Are we recruiting potential clients who are representative of the need that's out there across the country? And this is something that we've actually put into our top goals for the year as an organization to move forward with, and looking at the interrelationships between the nonprofit sector, the corporate sector, the government sector. We all have a role to play, and all need to play our part, for sure.
Sure. Lee?
Look, I definitely think there's a huge crossover. As nonprofits or not-for-profit organizations, we do have to remain apolitical in terms of our reach. And that's a good thing. I mean, I don't know about the other panelists. I assume all of us at night, we pick our channel of choice and start yelling at the TV from probably about 6:30 until we go to sleep. But during the day, in our job, we don't have that luxury to be able to do that. We have to figure out how we are going to have a conversation with someone that does not agree with us politically, if in fact, that person is representing, whether it's a business organization or a government organization or whatever, that can help us and help the common good. And the skills that we need in order to have those conversations, keep our feelings, our personal feelings in the background and not let them affect, what we do, is important. And if we can kind of teach other people to do that, maybe there's a chance that we can actually have real dialogue in this country, which is, it's a little tough right now.
Well, I think right now, a lot of the country is sort of trying to grapple with social responsibility and social justice, and, trying to come to terms with where are we as a society in terms of accepting all people and being tolerant, being tolerant of differences. It was very different 50 years ago in the 60s when I was growing up. It was almost anticipated that you would be on some picket line during the week, demonstrating against something. And then, those of us as quote unquote leaders in the nonprofit corporate sector, I think a lot of people look to us to see what the climate's like, what people, are talking about, speaking up against. Personally, for me and Long Island Cares, we're in a very sensitive area because, look, we were founded by a social activist. And, I grapple a lot with what am I going to say? What should I say? Should I say anything at all? And then the voice comes in the ear. What would Harry Chapin do? And that's what has to guide me. If the man was still alive and was still actively involved in this organization and had the reach that he had, on a national level, what are you supposed to say? I mean, this is a guy that blew the lid off of world hunger and said, hunger in America is the shame of the country. And we see a lot of this out in the community now. And look, how many of us have been on a picket line, whether it's, supporting Black Lives Matter or supporting law and order or supporting a particular candidate? Sure, all of us are apolitical and we try to stay away from the fray, and that's fine. But at some point in time, something may happen in the world that's going to be very important for us, where we decide, no, we can't be silent anymore. And I see a lot of that going on right now in our industry, food banking, because of the response to COVID. And, how much can we as organizations sit back and say, oh, this is perfectly acceptable. 1,100 people sitting in their car waiting for a 20-pound box of food. Hey, that's the American way. No, it's not. That's not what this is supposed to be about. But I digress. Mike? Come on.
Your rants get raves there, Paul.
I'm sorry.
So I guess I want to play off something that Lee just said a moment ago, and I guess respectfully have a different perspective, which is I understand the concept of not being political and being apolitical. And, we receive money from government and such, and that is always that kind of, kind of overhanging, concern. I don't see social justice and social injustice as political. I see it as deeply personal for my employees and for our communities that we want to serve and for leadership in our communities. So I think, kind of our approach has been, if you're going to be an entity that wants to be involved in social justice, you have to take inventory about your own experience with social injustice. So we've had really hard, Paul, we started this conversation before all started. I'm retiring this year. I've been in this business nonprofit for well over 40 years now. And so you still, to have hard conversations at this point in my career, it's like, wow, do I really want to take this on? And I really do, because having conversations with my staff to hear their experiences of injustice, what they deal with every day when they come to work or when they go home, have been, has really been eye openers, even for me, who's been around these paths and around discrimination and injustice for a long time. For example, I talked before about staff of color taking our agency cars, going into neighborhoods, getting pulled over by police or other people in the community going like, what are you doing here? And basically being told, we don't want you. And they're going, bring out their MHAW ID and go like, I'm doing my job. Well, you're not welcome here. Some metrics. If you look at the people you serve and you say, just by color, by race, by ethnicity, by language, are we matching the people we serve with what are the demographics of Suffolk County? And if you fall short, that's an injustice. And that doesn't feel right. And then you have to kind of go like, what are we doing wrong here? When you hear from staff that they don't feel like there's advancement for them in their agency, in the agency, because they perhaps feel like it's a disadvantage to be a person of color. Well, that's really hard. When you hear from your staff about their roles, their parents, and almost probably 40% of my staff are parents and dealing with all the issues of studying from home, being available for their kids, juggling all those roles, and then they're saying about the hard conversations that they have with their kids about safety and about navigating prejudice. What parents of color tell their kids about police and teach them about safety is very different than parents who are white and from white communities. We've had hard conversations about the concept of privilege. So these aren't political conversations. These are conversations that people have that carry with them. We've had really hard conversations in teams and between supervisor and supervisee when, for example, staff of color comes back from this incident with police being questioned about what are you doing in this neighborhood, bring that back to the supervisor and feeling like the supervisor didn't respond in a way that really understood how that felt for the person. You have clients who say, I only want to work with a person of this color or that language, whatever, a male, a female, someone who's not gay, all those kinds of things come up. And what does that feel like to be able to do work? So in order to be truly involved with social justice, you have to really examine the social injustice in your own kind of yard. And I would say, that relationship of what do we have to offer employers? It's our responsibility as nonprofits to be able to have those hard, introspective kind of conversations so that you can share it with other sectors who, it's not naturally a part of business to do this, but it affects business. It affects bottom line.
It's interesting. Let me add a little bit onto what you just said, because I think it brings a little more closer together. look, in the last 41 years that I've been doing this, working in the nonprofits on Long Island, not everyone is always going to agree with me, and I'm not always going to agree with everyone else. But I've always believed from early on that the nonprofit sector has an obligation to be the voice for people in need. If you just look at the screen and you look at the aspects of society that each of us are dealing with in our own way, John working with, in the disabilities field with people with visual impairments, John working in the veteran services area with people who have fought for this country, many coming back with disabilities, go back to the 60s and the 70s when our veterans field felt very underappreciated and disrespected. Lee, if your issue of homelessness, you're responding to homelessness, a very big social, problem in our region, in our world. And Mike's work with mental health, and of course our work here at Long Island Cares with the issue of hunger and poverty as well. Yeah, there may be a challenge, there may be a thin line, corporate social responsibility, social injustice, bring them together. It's social responsibility. We have an obligation to speak out when we see injustice. That is why following the horrific death of George Floyd, so many nonprofits took to social media. It was almost like if you don't make a statement, people are not going to respect you. I saw my colleagues in food banking struggling with this. So we're 10 food banks in New York, 4 came out publicly and made a statement.
I'd like to clarify what I said before, because I didn't make the point that I wanted to make. We do have to take stands. Habitat Suffolk came out very strongly, taking a stand against racism, during the Black Lives Matter. Social justice, it is the core of what we do, okay? What we don't have, what I don't think we have what we shouldn't be doing though, or what we should be doing is we have to figure out how we talk to both sides in terms of having the dialogue.
Sure.
Because I know, personally, okay, especially over the last couple of years, tend to talk to people who think like I do, agree with me on all sorts of issues and so forth. Don't have a whole lot of patience for that other point of view. And I'm not going to tell you which side I'm on or which side I'm not on. You can probably guess though. But as a nonprofit, a nonprofit is not allowed to endorse a candidate for elected office. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think and since most of us depend on government money one way or another, it's important for us to be able to talk to politicians on both sides of the fence and try and have that dialogue. And a dialogue that I'll tell you, in my personal life, I'm not interested in having at all, okay? But in my professional life, as the CEO of Habitat for Humanity, I do have to reach out to all the Congress people in my district, all of the Suffolk legislators that are in my district, regardless of what their political leaning is one way or the other, to try and move forward the mission of my organization and the social justice.
And I don't think anyone on this panel would disagree with you. We're all, we're all walking the same line. We've been doing it for decades. But, then again, you go back to, I have to go back to the issue of what would the person that founded this organization do? Granted, he was a unique guy, he was completely different than Jimmy Carter. Although, don't forget, there's a relationship between Chapin and Carter. But no one on the panel is wrong. But, when what we're doing, is bringing up the issues that we all have to, be confronted about. So, we're getting close to about, we have about 10 minutes left. I want to raise 2 more issues. What recommendations would each of you make to have nonprofit organizations, those that are interested in cultivating relationships, what would you tell them? John, let's start with you.
Yeah, so yeah, I'd go back to some of my previous comments. It's about trust, creating that value for both sides, right? We established that relationships are a two-way street, and providing meaningful, engaging opportunities so people and corporations, not only the corporate leaders but the employees, have some skin in the game, that they feel connected to your mission and want to help, not something that they're forced to do or something somebody's telling them to do, that they have and they develop an affinity or a passion for your mission by providing them meaningful opportunities. So to me, Paul, it all comes back to trust, relationships, and providing that value and engagement.
Look, we all know there are some incredible corporate leaders here on Long Island that have, very, very broad visions of what their corporation should be doing. We could all probably rattle off the names of 10 of them that have given to each of our nonprofits. Some, basically roll it out and they want to be recognized, and others, look, I'm going to give you this money, but don't tell anyone. I'm not looking for the publicity. Frankly, a lot of them aren't looking to be asked by other people. They're just doing what they did. That's the big celebrity thing. When a celebrity gives you money and they don't want their name mentioned, it's because they don't want to be contacted by anyone. John knows that because he's got a lot of celebrities supporting his organization. Mike, what would you suggest to nonprofits that are interested in cultivating relationships with socially responsible corporations?
I would say, we struggle with this. I'll say that to some extent, because you can fall into a trap as a nonprofit where you have your existing book of business, whether it's services, providing healthcare, mental health care, whatever it is, and you could fall into your book of business and go like, boy, I've got far more than I can handle. And believe me, through COVID right now, mental health care, mental health response, I've got more business than I want. Not all business that's paying well, but I've got more business. I'm sure my partners feel the same way. So I guess the trap is in all the volume of business as a nonprofit. The trap is you can become so insular that you don't recognize the importance of the relationships of unlike entities like companies, whether they provide services or provide products. For us, a lot of collaborations lately with churches and with libraries who are going through their own changes. Churches are going through their own changes on how to cope through this time. Hospitals, people who are, provide healthcare, people who provide residential care in nursing homes and in assisted livings and, and other group homes and things like that. So our business is changing because all these kinds of entities around us that are trying to do the right thing within their own corridor, but struggling because predominantly, it comes down to kind of how their staff, their employees, their clients, their customers are managing the mental health impact of what's around us, whether it's social injustice or COVID. So I've been through lots of tragedies, over the years, from Sandy to 9/11 to whatever. They all kind of rear this opportunity around mental health and takes us out of that kind of insular place. So I guess that's the advice, is watch the trap of becoming so shielded and focused on just your day-to-day contractual work.
No, it's an excellent point. I'm going to ask one more question of all three of you before we need to shut the screen. In a COVID-19 climate currently, with so many corporations downsizing or even shutting down, how is your organization going to move forward to ensure that the work you do is not interrupted? Lee, we'll start with you.
I mean, that's a tough one. First of all, we're definitely looking at our volunteer activities and seeing what we can continue on a COVID responsible way. But the other thing which we're looking at, with the downsizing and so forth, is having some lower entry-level opportunities for companies to partner with us. So pre-COVID, if you wanted to partner with Habitat in any kind of a meaningful way, $2,500 was the minimum contribution that. Now we're looking at lowering that. We're looking at seeing, what can we do, and again, trying to, start small, build a long-term relationship. We've had some of our long-term sponsors that, because of issues that they're going through right now, are not in a position to give us money or to give us as much money as they have before. And we're trying to give them that same level of volunteer opportunity that we had given them when times was good, figuring that when things turn around, they'll remember us and get back where they were. And maybe if we're lucky, they'll be in a position to make up what they couldn't do, during this time.
I think when we come out of this, and I couldn't even begin to guess when we're coming out of this, when we come out of it, I think a lot of things are going to be different. I think right already now, if you drive on the island, as all of you do, you see the landscaping change. I mean, yesterday I was driving in Nassau County. I passed the Pier 1, I passed the Models. They're shuttered. Now we're going to pass Regal Theaters. They're shuttered. Dave & Buster's shuttered. So, it's going to be, sometimes I think if we wake up from this, when we wake up from it, it's going to be like that Charlton Heston movie where he was the last guy standing in the world, and there was no one around him. Everything's gone. John, how is your organization going to move forward with corporations downsizing or shutting down? Because your organization is a darling of the corporate sector.
So it's, for us, it's about, kind of reimagining the whole process of development, fundraising, and our volunteers, right? So looking at our organization, we've already moved some of the sectors of our program and some of the sectors of our fundraising virtually, as most people have had to do. We are fortunate to have a very creative and content-rich type of environment here, with the dogs and how they're growing. So there's a lot of interest in that. But I think if you look at it, from a business side, we made two key decisions very early on with COVID. Number one was to have meaningful engagement with our donors, with our volunteers, to keep them informed every step of the way so they felt as if they were a part of the process. Not to call them and ask them for money, but to let them know this is what's happening and here's how you can help. The other piece that, I think, which we're just embarking on right now, is injecting new energy, right? We're not doing the same things the same way. We're injecting some new energy into our program offerings, and we're injecting some new energy into our fundraising program, so people have something new and exciting, to help wrap their heads around, and not just getting hit with the same, type of messaging and same type of need. So it's about, communicating in a meaningful way with all of our constituencies and bringing some new energy to the table, because we really do have to diversify.
That's great. That's a great way to look at it. I mean, to inject new energy into what you're doing, to take a look at what you've done and do it differently. We got a lot of calls in the last 7 months, still getting them from the corporate sector. What could we do? How could we help? One of the first thing we did was what a lot of nonprofits did. We just shut down special events because we weren't going to be gathering people. The experience we had doing that, nobody pulled their money away from us. They were all happy to hear that the dinner was canceled and there won't be a golf outing. Keep the money, it's worth it. So yeah, you got to do things differently. Mike, you have the last word.
Well, similarly, as far as fundraising, we have our annual Chili Fest, which had 1,000 people a year, and we're doing this all in new ways, drive-by, pick up from a local restaurant that's participating, all the same thing. So we all have to pivot creatively. So that's our chili, we call it Chili Smackdown. But to go to your question, Paul, look, changing times means, new demands. So for us as a mental health provider, everything went from person side by side to telehealth visits to, telemental health visits. So in that change, two major new needs for partners came up. The first was one that we worked with you on, Paul, was we have 3 food pantries that now got, especially our folks that we serve who are afraid of going to the store. The demand went up 4 times for our 3 little pantries. And thanks to partnership with you, my Rotary Club has been incredibly wonderful. Other corporate partners have helped to make sure we have enough food and we have enough volunteers to do the drive-by deliveries and all those kinds of things. But the second need, an area for partnership, and I'm calling out for help here, is while telehealth and telemental health sounds great, we're all living in Zoom and your doc is talking to you by Zoom and your therapist is talking to you by Zoom or whatever. For almost 20% of our people, especially who live on the margin, that doesn't work. Their broadband doesn't work, their cell phone doesn't work, their equipment is old. We're looking for some partners to help with that, to directly help provide people with the funds to be able to improve their Wi-Fi, to improve their cell contract. We'd love to have more meetings with, Altice and Verizon and such, to have them step up to get that group of people who are on the margin. Because from our standpoint, the new social dimension of health are those people who can't participate virtually in their healthcare and can't participate in the environment or in their education now. So desperate times mean changing our business and changing what our needs are. So those are some of the needs that certainly we're looking for corporate partnership.
Well, you couldn't have given a better example of during this time now, during the pandemic, needing to find invest new energy into what we're doing to identify the problem, which I don't think probably any of us watching this screen would even think about. They don't have access to broadband. They don't have the equipment. Really? I thought everyone has an iPhone. And to be able to at least identify the target. Yeah, where is Altice? What are you doing about this to make it easier for people who need telehealth or telemental health to connect? And the same thing would be true for Verizon, absolutely. Excellent example. We have about 2 minutes if anyone has a question or a chat note. If not, I want to remind everyone that we still have the virtual trade show going on, the exhibit hall. And, look how you're going to invest new energy. Look what the HIA-LI has done. Look how active and proactive they've been for 7 months now. Everything on the screen, everything coming together. People are able to do their jobs working at home. I have to hand it to the HIA-LI for being so proactive in what they've been doing and making us all proud to be members. Ariana, you want to bring us home?
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate that. And, it's been difficult during these times, and especially with the trade show, we were saying, do we do it? Do we not do it? And we came to the conclusion that businesses still need this help and they still need this trade show, and not holding it would be a disservice to our members. So we picked up and we figured out how to do it. And we're very happy that it all came together. And we thank all of you for joining us for this panel today. You were all fantastic. And for anyone who wants to view the virtual exhibit hall, the link is right in the chat. You could click right there. I'll bring you right over. And yeah, so thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Lee, John, Mike, thank you so much. Mike, I'm sure I'll speak to you before the end of the year.
Right.
Stay well, guys.
Stay well. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Take care.